Hey, I'm Nick DiMatteo, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 32 of Music is Not a Genre. Let's do it, MxG. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening. Today's episode is the final episode of Season 7. Yes, it is time to take a break. You'll still be getting episodes every week. I'll be doing some bonus episodes and maybe some repeats and things like that until Season 8 debuts in September or October. But after this week, that's it for Season 7, and this episode is Death is Dumb Volume 18, Big Deaths in 2025 so far. So, thank you as always for watching and listening. Listeners, go to youtube.com/@musicisnotagenre. You get a video for every episode of this podcast. Watchers, go to nickdimatteo.com/musicisnotagenre. If you would rather just listen and not wonder why I have shadows on my shirt. Those shadows are because it's really freaking hot in here. And I just recorded a different episode and I've been sweating because you can't put noisy things on like fans when you're doing this, at least not in this cut rate studio, such as it is. But if you'd rather just listen and not, have to deal with any of that, nickdimatteo.com/musicisnotagenre. And everyone, go to patreon.com/musicisnotagenre to support this podcast, my band, Rec, and everything I do. And speaking of Rec, of course, our album Kite to Camden is out everywhere streaming. nickdimatteo.com/discography. Go find it. You'll see the singles there too on that page. There's some new singles, including Way Too Rough, and another one that I'm really excited about called You Know You're Right, coming out very soon, in a few weeks probably, or less by the time this airs. And I am doing songwriting coaching, the Song Coach. If you're someone who's always wanted to write a song but never felt like you could, you need to talk to me. I will help you get there, no matter where you start. It's just true. Go to nickdimatteo.com/songcoaching and find out more about that. Let's get to the topic again. Death is Dumb, Volume 18. Big deaths in 2025 so far. So, why this topic? If you've been a fan of the show, and hopefully you have been, you will remember that I have been doing for years now a sub-series called Death is Dumb, which is not just a sub-series, but it's my philosophy. I think death is fucking stupid. And this year is no exception. This year I have already lost a cousin. I've lost an aunt. I've probably lost more relatives than that, and I have a big family, and I don't know. I've lost some colleagues. Friends of mine have lost parents. Friends of mine have lost children and other significant people in their lives. And as we know, it's been a huge year already for music deaths. I would argue, and we'll get into this later, more significant than recent years. Seems like a surge. And there have been more music deaths than other prominent deaths in other, arts and science, fields and political fields and things like that. So for Volume 18 of Death is Dumb, I thought I'd review that. The year to date, which as of this recording is August 6th, 7th, I believe. So if someone in the music world has died between August 7th, 2025 and the debut of this episode, I'm sorry I missed them. And please let me know that I missed them. I'm going to comment a bit on how death clusters do seem to happen. And in fact, the bonus MxTRA at patreon.com/musicisnotagenre is on those music death clusters. I go over what clusters are in terms of events. Do they really exist? And I go over several of the big clusters throughout history of music deaths. For this episode, I will do a quick overview, including how this year is comparing to previous years, then a rundown of the most significant deaths 2025 so far, stopping along the way to spend more time with some of the bigger ones, then conclusions, featured song, and questions, as always. Sources here are Wikipedia, Google, Billboard, bestclassicbands.com, Reddit, had a great discussion among people on this, ranker.com, and vocal.media. Many of those sources apply more to the bonus than they do to this, but same difference. It's all research. Disclaimers. I, of course, won't get to all of this year's music deaths. I may skip some you consider significant, and I may spend time on ones that I consider significant you don't think should be on that list. I won't spend tons of time on any single person Again, a little extra on the bigger ones. And I may reserve some subjects for future episodes, and I will mention that. Again, I may emphasize some artists more because I know them better. And others that you know better, I may not emphasize. Let me know. I want to hear from you. So an overview, how does 2025 compare to previous years so far? Well, there have already been close to 350 music deaths this year through August, part of August, according to one source, which is around what the entirety of 2024 had, and far more already than 23, 22, 21, and even 2020. So big year, sadly, for music deaths. But it's not just about numbers, it's about profile and impact. And while there are, of course, famous deaths every year in pretty much every field, there were way fewer in previous recent years than this year. And we're barely 2/3 of the way through the year, and that's the case. So I stand by my contention that this is a major cluster year. Again, if you want to hear all about all the major cluster years in history since at least the 1950s, check out the bonus MxTRA at patreon.com/music is not a genre. That was fun bonus to research, even though the topic is not necessarily fun. Do I believe bad or good things come in threes and all that stuff? Not really. But it is notable that deaths do seem to happen in clusters. Couldn't say why. Maybe a certain sense of shared energy. People of similar stature feeling like it's time to give it. No idea. There's probably no connection whatsoever. But I do get into this in the conclusions. But let's get into the list. The deaths this year, music deaths, 2025 so far, as of early August. First, a word that causes a death. When I did the Death is Dumb episode on drummers, which you're going to get that bonus episode connected to that very soon, actually, before season 8. It was unsurprising that in many cases there's no cause of death listed. It's partly because it often takes time to diagnose, and, it took a while for them to figure out how Ozzy died. And these are all very recent deaths, or they didn't want to reveal it. Maybe people, families, publicists don't want people to know what the cause of death is, or maybe they really just don't know. Of the hundreds of deaths listed so far this year, I've chosen the ones that seem to have made the biggest impact in music on our Western culture and in other cultures, if applicable, in any genre. All right. I'm going in order, of course, from January 1 to August 7th, the day of this recording. Or at least yesterday. So there may have been deaths between the recording and release of this episode, as I said. And here's number 1, and that is January 1st. Wayne Osmond died at the age of 73 of a stroke. He was the second oldest sibling, the Osmond family. 73 is not very old. Same day, Leo Dan died at the age of 82 of for undisclosed reasons. He was an Argentine singer-songwriter that more than one source mentioned, so I thought he was worth mentioning. January 3rd, Brenton Wood died at the age of 83 of natural causes. Was a soul singer. Worth mentioning. What's also worth mentioning is that I'm sorry, but I said this, and I've said it before, I reject natural causes as a cause of death. Because I reject the death is dumb, and I reject the idea that, okay, you just died. Something failed. No matter how old you are. And, okay, you could say that death is natural, but there's a cause there. So just say what it is. Be more specific. January 7th, Peter Yarrow died of bladder cancer at the age of 86. He was the Peter in Peter, Paul, and Mary. So a pretty big one. The first relatively big one of the year, but not huge. In January 10th, Sam Moore died at the age of 89. Complications from surgery. He was from Sam and Dave. He was the tenor. Dave was the baritone. He died in 1988. They did Soul Man, Hold On, I'm Coming. They were huge. Sam and Dave were huge. January 21, Garth Hudson died at the age of 87 for undisclosed reasons. Keyboardist for the band. So I believe, was he the last surviving member of the band? Because Robbie Robertson, all those other people, I believe he was the last surviving member, and now there are none. I think so, but if that's not the case, let me know. January 30th, big one. one of the big ones, Marianne Faithfull, died at the age of 78 for undisclosed reasons. Hugely popular British singer. As Tears Go By, worked with the Stones, had a very long career, released albums in every decade since the 60s. Had major drug and alcohol abuse issues, but was always well-loved. February 5th, Irv Gotti died at 54 of a stroke. He's a record producer and exec. He founded Murder, Inc. Records. He helped to discover Jay-Z, DMX, Ja Rule, and Ashanti. Huge hip-hop presence in the 90s and 2000s. If you were following hip-hop and all, you remember Irv Gotti. February 12th, Tommy Hunt died at the age of 91 for undisclosed reasons. From the Flamingos doo-wop group, I Only Have Eyes for You. Their version of that song is one of my favorites from that era. 91 Tommy Hunt. February 17th, Rick Buckler died at the age of 69 for undisclosed reasons. I'm so tired of saying that. He was the drummer for The Jam, featuring Paul Weller and all of that. So pretty big band at the turn of the 70s and 80s. February 20th, Jerry Butler died at the age of 85 of Parkinson's. He was the lead singer of The Impressions, which also featured Curtis Mayfield. So really big kind of R&B soul band, harmonic band. February 23, Chris Jasper died of cancer at the age of 73. He was in the Isley Brothers and also in Isley Jasper Isley. If you were alive in the 80s and cognizant of pop music, you remember Isley Jasper Isley, who had a brief career. So the middle person of that group is dead. February 24, arguably, Marianne Faithfull notwithstanding and some others, arguably the first huge death of the year. Roberta Flack died at the age of 88 of cardiac arrest resulting from ALS. How much can I say about her that hasn't already been said? She's someone who deserves her own episode. Singer, pianist, so signature. You know it's her. Ever present in the 70s and through the 80s. She had hits like The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face or Killing Me Softly with his song, which I just listened to a podcast about. And even though that was a cover, the way First Time Ever I Saw Your Face was a cover, she made them her own. And no one would dispute that. She did the signature versions of those songs. Feel Like Making Love. She was the first artist to win Record of the Year Grammys in consecutive years. She also did songs with the amazing Donny Hathaway, who died way too soon, I believe 79, such as Where's the Love? Where is the love? And The Closer I Get to You. And I also remember from my childhood her 1983 duet with Peabo Bryson, Tonight I Celebrate My Love for You. I mean, just iconic, just iconic. She last charted in 1991 with the Maxi Priest single Set the Night to Music and last released an album in 2012. Although I believe there was some other album that came out after that that wasn't new music. February 28th, David Johansen died at 75 of cancer. Singer of the New York Dolls, also known as Buster Poindexter, hot. Also an actor. Did a tribute to his bandmate Johnny Thunders earlier this year. Johnny Thunders will be mentioned in the bonus. And even though I was not a huge fan of New York Dolls and Buster, I mean, we all knew Buster Poindexter in the 80s. I always respected David Johansen. He was always a New Yorker, through and through. Saw him in a diner a few years ago. I think it was 2018, I believe. March 1st. Now, I'm going to say this. Some of the deaths on this list, I didn't know the people at all, or it wouldn't have registered with me anyway. Others, I knew they died because everybody talked about them. Others, I had no idea that they died. And that includes this one. On March 1st, Angie Stone died at the age of 63 in a car accident. No idea that she died. That should have been bigger news. She was huge in the neo-soul movement. She worked with people like D'Angelo. She just had an amazing voice and put out amazing albums, late 90s, early 2000s especially, and was also an actor. R.I.P. Angie Stone. That one, it made me sad because I guess things that are more of our era make us sadder, and I'll ask you about that in questions. But, you know, which of these deaths have made more of an impact, or the ones in history? March 1st, Joey Mullen died at the age of 77 of multiple health issues. He was the longest surviving classic member of Badfinger. Not an original member, but that classic, like late 60s, 70s. March 4th, Roy Ayers died at the age of 84 after an unspecified long illness. He was a jazz and fusion vibraphonist. Everybody loves the sunshine. Boo, 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 boo. Beautiful. I did a deep dive on his stuff a couple of weeks ago when I was listening to a podcast about that song, Everybody Loves the Sunshine. Worth a listen. March 4, also, DJ Funk died at 54 of cancer, pioneer of ghetto house music. March 7th, Dwayne Wiggins died at the age of 64 of bladder cancer, founded Tony, and helped develop such artists as Destiny's Child, Keisha Cole, Her, Zendaya, and Kehlani. So pretty active straight up. Sad. Death is dumb. March 16th, Jesse Colin Young died for undisclosed reasons. I didn't put an age down. That's my bad. I'm sure he was had to be in his 70s or 80s because he was founder and lead singer of the Youngbloods, who sang, "Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try and love one another right now." March 29th, and a note here before I say this. This is about music. There have been actors who have died, politicians, other people in other media. I'm not going into them because this is about the music deaths for this year. That said, some of them cross over, including this one from March 29th. Richard Chamberlain died at the age of 90 of a stroke. More famous as an actor and eventually a gay icon, but also had several top 40 hits in the 1960s. Excuse me. It's a dry day because of the Canadian wildfires. April 1st, Johnny Tillotson died at the age of 86 of Parkinson's, country pop singer and songwriter. Also April 1st, George Freeman, the jazz guitarist, died at the age of 97. I believe natural causes. April 7th, Clem Burke died at the age of 70, cancer. He was the drummer for Blondie, straight through up until, I believe, this year. I think he did some drumming for them this year. So R.I.P. Clem Burke. Couldn't have told you his name, but, you know, still sad. And that's a point I'll make in conclusions about whether or not it's important to mention these people, but we'll get there. April 11th, Max Romeo died at the age of 80 of a heart-related issue. He was a big reggae singer. April 29th, the lead singer of The Alarm died at the age of 66, Mike Peters. I neglected to say why, but I guess you can look that up. And then interesting when, just a kind of an editorial note here, I tend to record these episodes in clusters, speaking of clusters, and that's because I have to set up all the equipment and do all the editing and whatever, and it's better to just do a few at once when I can, for the most part. And when that happens, it can be exhausting. The research itself is exhausting. The recording, as you can hear from my dry voice, is exhausting. There's a catch in my throat. Wonderful in the middle of this recording, but you know I'm one take Willie. And the editing is exhausting. So there will naturally be things that I don't miss things often. I did miss Mike Peters' cause of death. Please look that up. May 1st, again, another surprise to me. Jill Sobule died at the age of 66 of a house fire, which sounds just terrible. I mean, all of this is terrible, but that's specifically very terrible. She's famous for the songs I Kissed a Girl and Supermodel. So one of the first songs to just come out, the LGBTQ kind of thing. I believe that was 1995. She is dead now. One of the very small handful of surprises of this list for me for this year. May 9, Johnny Rodriguez died at the age of 73 for undisclosed reasons. Country singer. May 15th, I have bolded some of these, a dozen or so, Baker's dozen, that I consider to be the most significant of the year. If I were to scroll back, I would say right now, so far of the ones I've mentioned, those that I said were significant, were Marianne Faithfull. And then you have Roberta Flack, David Johansen, Angie Stone. And then you have Jill Solbuhl, significant to me anyway. And not that the others weren't significant, but in terms of impact again, or at least, notoriety in my world, I'm going to say that May 15th, the death of Charles Strauss at the age of 96 for undisclosed reasons, is significant. You don't know Charles Strauss, probably. He composed, a composer and lyricist, so basically songwriter, come on, for such musicals as Applause, I don't know it that well, Bye Bye Birdie, and Annie. The guy who wrote those died on May 15th. I think that's one of the huge ones. Also a huge one, on May 26th, Rick Derringer died at the age of 77 for undisclosed reasons. He's the lead singer and guitarist of the McCoys, who did Hang On, Sloopy, Sloopy, Hang On. He was also a well-known solo artist, including the hit song Rock and Roll, Hoochie Coo, and eventually a producer for people like Edgar Winter and Weird Al. I think significant. June 5th, Wayne Lewis died at the age of 68 of undisclosed causes. He was a singer for Atlantic Starr, which was always in every dance in high school. And I'll be loving you for always. And you should know that our love will grow. And forever will be you and me. And that person is dead now. Another very significant one before we... in fact, I think now is actually the time to take a break. I'm going to go ahead and take a break now because... I think we're getting into an area that's like super, super significant. And so I think that it's worth to kind of break it here. So it's a slightly shorter episode, but last episode of the season, trying to let you down easy. Although this is all about death. So how easy is that? I don't know. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute. Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Music is Not a Genre. If you'd like to learn more about this podcast, if you'd like to learn more about the music I do with my band Rec or any other projects or anything else about me, go to nickdematteo.com. That's Nick, DEMATTEO.com. And everything is there. There's even a link to a merch store where you can get t-shirts and mugs and hats and totes and notebooks and so many other things. I'm always adding new products there. Great way to support the podcast. And finally, go to patreon.com/music is not a genre if you'd really like to show your support. My fans and lovely family there get exclusives and other perks and early releases, and they get to suggest topics for future podcasts as well. Thanks for listening to the mid-roll. Now back to the show. All right, we are back with Death is Dumb Volume 18, big music deaths in 2025 so far. And I broke there because this next one is one of the hugest ones. Someone might argue the hugest, although, debatable, but top two, I think, top three. Sly Stone died on June 9 at the age of 82 from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. One of those guys you thought would have died sooner, because what a tough life in many ways. And another person on this list who deserves a full separate episode, and I may do that next year. I think it's high time that I dived into all of Sly's music, because I've never done that. I know so many of the big stuff and some of the other ones, and Questlove's documentary really elucidated a lot. And even though I had already been interested in Sly, that piqued my interest even more. And so I probably will do an episode in season 8, but we shall see. If you want me to do one, shout it out. Because when you all say do it, especially those of you at patreon.com/music is not a genre, then I do it. Ask the person who wanted Culture Club. I did it, right? So Sly's amalgamation of styles and his multi-ethnic band and use of electronic instruments before most other people were doing it just made him an absolute pioneer in music and a genius. I'm glad he was able to somewhat participate in and at least see his documentary before he died, but honestly, this was a shock. And probably the second huge loss chronologically after Roberta Flack. Like huge, even though I've listed others as kind of huge. And of course, a couple days later, which is what leads people to talk about clusters, June 11th, Brian Wilson died at the same age, 82, of respiratory arrest. Yet another genius who also deserves his own episode, or at least high time for me to do a Beach Boys episode. I haven't done one. I've done Beatles, and there were so many. I mean, I've done the Kinks. I need to do an episode on the Beach Boys. They've never been my favorite, but the more I listen, the more I respect them. And I have heard every single song that they put out. I listened to all of them once, a couple of years ago. But anyway, Brian Wilson, hugely influential, even to me, for some of the harmonies that I do. If you listen to my song, Final Call, from Sympathy for the Weird, is just one example of how I use that kind of ethereal Beach Boy layered harmony type thing. And I think the third biggest death of the year chronologically, and also the second biggest shock after him dying, was the fact that he lived as long as he did, just like Sly. So, June 11th, same day, Douglas McCarthy died at the age of 58 for undisclosed reasons. He was the lead singer of MxTRA. It's an industrial band from Britain, or I remember from the 90s, 80s, 90s. June 17th, Charles Burrell died at the age of 104, I believe. We have a winner for the year, longest living musician. For undisclosed reasons, he was a jazz and classical bassist. And I saw a picture of him performing earlier this year. Just looked in his element. Just loved it. I think that was him. I don't know. I could be mixing him up with somebody else. June 17th, Lou Christie died at the age of 82 for undisclosed reasons. He was a pop and soft rock singer-songwriter with some hits in the 70s. June 19th, Kevin Yarborough. Oh, this is another name I thought was Yarborough, but it's spelled Yarbrough. Ough, died at the age of 72 for undisclosed reasons. He was the first half of Yarborough Peoples, an R&B group, which I remember that name very prominently from the early 1980s. June 20th, Patrick Walden died at the age of 46. I believe the youngest to die this year. Undisclosed reasons. Guitarist for Baby Shambles, which was the guy, I don't remember. You know, baby, if you know 2000s, you know Baby Shambles. June 23, Mick Ralphs died at the age of 81 from stroke complications. He was the guitarist, singer, and founding member of both Mott the Hoople and Bad Company. So pretty big loss there, Mick Ralphs. June 24th, Bobby Sherman died at the age of 81 of stage 4 cancer. He was a 60s teen idol, had a series of hits, including the song Little Woman. I don't know much about him. Guarantee you I say to my parents, did you know Bobby Sherman died? They would remember him well. June 26th, I have marked this as one of the huge deaths of the year, even though you wouldn't say that, because it's not a Sly or a Brian Wilson or Roberta Flack. It's Lalo Schifrin, died at the age of 93, complications from pneumonia. He was a composer, arranger, conductor, pianist. Known best for his theme to Mission Impossible. Dun, 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 dun. That's Lalo Schifrin. Also did the theme to Mannix, a 70s show, detective show, and scores for the movies Cool Hand Luke, Bullet with Steve McQueen, THX-1138, Coppola's first movie, Enter the Dragon, Four Musketeers, Voyage of the Damned, The Eagles Landed, The Amityville Horror, and the entire Rush Hour trilogy. And a lot of people who love score music will say Lalo Schifrin is near the top of their favorites. So a big loss. June 26th, Walter Scott Jr. died at the age of 81 of cancer. He was a singer for the Whispers, kind of a doo-wop R&B band. July 4, Young Noble died at the age of 47, suicide by gunshot. First suicide on this list. He was a rapper, part of Tupac's Outlaws crew. Very sad. July 4, Mark Snow died at the age of 78 of undisclosed causes. He was a film and TV composer known for his theme to The X-Files, as well as music for Smallville, Blue Bloods, Heart to Heart, One Tree Hill. I remember seeing his name credits years and years on TV. July 16, a big one, I think. Connie Francis died at the age of 87 of pneumonia. She was featured in my episode on Italian musicians, because that's not her real name, Connie Francis. She's Italian, American. Who's Sorry Now? Everybody's Somebody's Fool. She was the most popular female vocalist in the United States from 1958 to 1964. So, significant death. June 17th, Alan Bergman died at the age of 99 of undisclosed causes. He was a composer and songwriter with his wife, Marilyn, who died in 2022. Co-wrote a lot of hits, including The Way We Were, The Windmills of Your Mind, You Don't Bring Me Flowers. Alan Bergman is dead. I think another huge death right here. I would say huge. July 22, Chuck Mangione died at the age of 84 of natural causes, quote unquote. Jazz flugelhornist and trumpeter and composer. That song feels so good. Childhood perennial for me and people of my generation. He also did music for the Olympics. He was a soothing presence and ironically a pioneer of smooth jazz, a genre I can't stand. But when he did it, there was just felt like substance there. July 22nd, same day, Ozzy Osbourne died at the age of 76 of a heart attack. And even though we know his history, it was still a real shock to everyone, partly because he just had that farewell concert. Again, somebody who deserves a full episode with or without Black Sabbath. I'm going to earmark that for season 8. If you'd like me to do an episode on Black Sabbath and Ozzy, let me know. Because I'd love to dive back into that. I've heard all of that music, but I'd love to dive back into it. Ozzy was huge for me in my childhood. Huge. Mainly for Crazy Train and Flying High Again and all those hits. But still huge. July 22, same day, George Kooijmans died at the age of 77 of ALS. He was the guitarist and singer for the long running Dutch band Golden Earring, who were around for 60 years or something. And they're best known in the U.S. for their number one hit, Twilight Zone. Stepping into the Twilight Zone. My old band covered that. I got to sing it. It was fun. July 24, fairly big one. Cleo Lane died at the age of 97 of undisclosed causes. British scat singer and actor. Cleo Lane is just a name I always remember. July 26, Tom Lehrer died at the age also of 97. Singer-songwriter, mostly a parodist and a commentator and things like that. I would just remember Tom Lehrer's name from, NPR and things like that. August 1st, David Roach died at the age of 64 of cancer. Lead singer of the metal band Junkyard. Same day, August 1st, Jeannie Seely died at the age of 85. Complications from an intestinal infection. That sounds horrible. Grammy-winning country singer, Jeannie Seely. August 2, Howie T died at the age of 62. Undisclosed following a long illness. He was a hip-hop DJ and producer. He did Whistle's Just Buggin', which I remember fondly from the 80s. Color Me Bad's I Want to Sex You Up. Co-produced that. Did remixes for people like Madonna and Heavy D. August 4, Terry Reid died at the age of 75 of cancer, also known as Super Lungs because of his voice. He was a British rock singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Put out a lot of stuff. I don't know if he wrote specifically for others, but many, a long list of very, very well-known people covered his songs or recorded his songs, either or. August 4th, same day, Jane Morgan died at the age of 101. Second longest to live on this list of natural causes. Sure. I guess after you're 100, I'll take that. No, I won't. Traditional pop singer. She had some big hits in the late 1950s and then a lot of Broadway performances. August 6th, to round out the list, as I was going to print. There's no printing. Our printer broke months ago. But you know what I mean. As I was getting ready to just seal up this research and say, I'm ready to do this. Yes, last night, I see that Eddie Palmieri died at the age of 88 after a long illness. Pioneering Latin and salsa pianist, composer, and band leader, and I would argue one of the more significant deaths of the year. And because I am recording this on August 7th, and no one has so far died today in the music world that I know of, we're stopping on August 6th. Please comment and let me know who else has died since then that I should devote some time to, and I will put them in my catch-up episode next season. Which brings me to conclusions. My major picks, as I mentioned, run to 13 or 14 for the year. Others, maybe 15. Others might say at least these four were the big ones. Sly Stone, Brian Wilson, Ozzy Osbourne, Roberta Flack. And I don't know, That's why I put others in, but I think those were probably the biggest 4 of the year so far. No question, huge ones. No question there were more significant deaths this year than previous years, and it remains to be seen how much worse this year can get. But I think it already ranks as one of the biggest star clusters. Speaking of, if you want to know more about death clusters in history, in music, tune in to the bonus MxTRA, patreon.com/music is not a genre. I will start in the 1950s. You could probably guess what year and go straight to this year. I will even rank those clusters from, I think I had 8 or 6 of them, whatever, from number 8 to number 1 as the most significant music death clusters in history. You may be surprised at what my number 1 is. So bonus MxTRA, patreon.com/music is not a genre. So at least before we wrap, since we have time, at least a word on the cluster phenomenon in general. Research has shown that there are no actual meaningful clusters of anything, of any unrelated things. Things that don't cause other things are not clustered in terms of empirically speaking, whether they're good events or bad events or deaths or anything like that, weather events. Humans look for patterns even where there aren't any. This is called apophenia, the tendency to perceive order and meaning in chaos, kind of like all of astrology, even though I do find that fun. Same thing. It's also called illusory correlation, which is the tendency to see a connection between events that aren't actually linked, which I like. I don't do much, but I like when other people do it because it's fascinating to me. Confirmation bias plays a part in this too. We remember the things that reinforce our beliefs. Like with people who find numbers significant. Oh, I was born on such a date and my person's address was the same date, so we were meant to be together, that kind of thing. Ignoring the myriad other instances that don't have any correlation. Still fun though. I still like it. I don't think there's any actual meaning in it, but I still like it. Like, for example, my wife and I were both born on the 28th. I don't think there's meaning in that other than the meaning we give it. And we give it meaning because we love it. The media can amplify the idea that deaths and other things happen in 3s or other clusters because it makes for better news. This is another reason we think that way. There have been plenty of cases when 3 celebrities died within days of each other. I saw a list of these, and in every case, it's a real fudge in some of these ways. Either the time frame was stretched to include an outlier so that the 3s thing can be maintained, right? So that's one way. So let's say 2 people died and then 10 days later a 3rd person died. Oh, that's 3s. No, not really. The celebrities had no significant relation to each other. They weren't all musicians, or they didn't all have near the same level of fame or success. 2 really famous people died and then some way lesser famous. 3s. What about the other 5 people who died that day? There were more than 3 deaths, but people just ignored the others. That happened right around the time of Ozzy. The other point to make related to the last one is that deaths and other events in all categories are happening all the time, and we just choose to notice some more than others. All that said, if thinking and believing this helps call more attention to people who otherwise wouldn't get it, let's say Ozzy with Chuck Mangione and George Coymans, and there's a 3, golden earring, all on July 22nd, that's great. Because then you're not just paying attention to Ozzy, who deserves the attention, but you're paying attention to Chuck Mangione and George Coymans. It might make people look into music they weren't familiar with, which is what all of us music creators wish. Speaking of music creators, the featured song, I've said this before and it's true, I have written a lot of songs about death, including The Same Way, Scroll Out, Final Call, Me, You, and Everyone, 3 More Minutes. Those are just a few. They're all directly about death, and then there are a couple dozen others that are tangentially connected to the idea of death. And as I try not to repeat featured songs, I've only done it once or twice, I'm going to go with one of the tangential songs, since I have already shared 3 More Minutes, The Same Way, Scroll Out, Final Call, Me, You, and Everyone. And that tangential song, I can't believe I haven't shared this before, is a song called Too Good to Me. It's from an EP called What It Is, when I was still going under the artist name Nick. I've said this before, it's the first project I really felt came together exactly as I envisioned it. I'm still super proud of that project, and it helped both develop and propel my sound towards what Rec would eventually become. And it helped get me a producer for the album that came after that. That's how good that EP was. Too Good to Me is about the death of naivete and hope. The idea that once you see behind the veil existentially, psychologically, you learn things that are true. There's no going back. Every subsequent act in your life is connected to the reality that you know this truth and that one day you'll die. And the pressure to just do well by yourself and others in life is enough to make you crack. So yeah, I was in a tough place at the time. It's got a compelling electronic beat. It's dark electro, swirly, dramatically mounting production. Great vocals at the end, harmonies with guitars and keys and all of that. And it resolves into a chord that seems weird, but fits the chaos of the head and also is connected to the next song on the album, which is called Michelin. I highly recommend you listen to what it is in its entirety. It's a short EP, 7 songs. It flows together the way Kite to Camden flows. And I think it's worth a listen all the way through at nickdamadio.com/discography or nickdamadio.com/nickwhatitis. Either way, you'll hear Too Good to Me in just a few seconds. One of my favorite songs from that album. Questions. Do you feel like we've lost more major stars in 2025 than in recent years? Which music deaths hit you the most? Now and in history, do you believe deaths come in clusters? Did I leave out any music people you feel I should have included in this list? I'd like to know the answers to all these because, as always, my objectives are music, conversation, and connection. Thank you for Season 7. This is the final episode of Season 7. Thank you for hanging with me for this episode and for the entire season. And yes, you'll be getting more content in the next few weeks, bonus content and other such things. But I won't talk to you next week. I'll talk to you in several weeks. Have a good summer.
Oh, you've been too good to me. You let me see my life the way it's meant to be. Now everything I do rips me to pieces and makes me think of you. And the pressure's increasing till I can't close my eyes. Every time I move or breathe, a part of me dies. Oh, you've been too good to me. How can I go back to the quiet life now that I know what I know? I gotta be perfect, I gotta be strong. Perfect is reality.